So I have it categorized. We have grip work, CrossFit workouts, support, conditioning, which goes to the side, recovery, and gym bags. So one of the first things you'll see marketed a lot are lifting straps. Lifting straps are pretty much used for deadlifts. Okay? Most people, me included, you'll have your grip wear out before the rest of your body does. And if you loosen your grips at all on the deadlift, you lose power delivery, and the bar slips out of your hands and you can't lift it. The conventional straps, they just look like a strap and they loop around the bar. They work fine. There's a couple of companies. I have these from Versa Grip. There's also Cobra grips. They're a little bit more secure and they're faster for getting around the bar. And so what you wind up doing once you put it on is you just kind of put the bar in there and then you hold it. It makes the deadlift much tighter. It's safer. There's really no down part about using them. Some powerlifting competitions won't let you use them. Sometimes they use straps, sometimes not. That's really the only thing. If you're trying to do it for competitions, they may or may not let you use straps like this. Most allow conventional straps. You have to check the rules. Deadlift is one of the most important lifting exercises. And so while this is a unitasker, it's a unitasker for probably the most important exercise, or second most important, depending on how you feel about squats. So that is your questions on straps. Raise your hands as we go through. If you have questions on any of this, so I can show it all to you. These are going to be $20 to $30 for this kind of thing. Gymnastic grips. There's a lot of kinds of these types of devices. You need these for toes to bar, and then chest to bar, any bar rotation work. Without, or if you when we do Murphy, for example, lots of volume. Without them, you'll rip your hands. That's just a matter of time. You need these. You need chalk. You don't need any special chalk. Magnesium, sulfate, basic chalk. All the other advanced chalk are the same thing. There's nothing better, and the regular stuff has been working for a long time. So the liquid chalks are good for races where you're running and it dries. They're not good in gyms because it winds up sticking to the equipment and it's really hard to clean, and so that's why we don't allow liquid chalk. Grippers. So in CrossFit and most kinds of fitness, you really don't get enough grip work to keep up with everything else. It takes more volume. These are from Iron Mind. They're probably the best grippers that they make. They go up in difficulty. Grip is really important because you will compensate without it, right? If your crushing strength isn't where it needs to be, you'll start to recruit from your bicep and your shoulder and other places that you shouldn't be, rather than building the strength there. So it's kind of like a lot of people realize if you're doing running, you need to work on your toes and your feet, otherwise you get ankle issues. You'll get shoulder issues if your grip doesn't keep up, and it probably won't. So this kind of tool is very helpful. These are like incremental load. These are left-handed because of the spring direction, and they're very helpful. It's not, it's just a question of doing some reps with it. Same range, 10 to 12 reps with some rest and things like that.
Are these sufficient to work grip as a supplement to other workouts that we're doing? Just the crushing?
I would say the crushing is probably the most important, right? I wouldn't say it's the only thing to work. You can work opening as well. Those are typically done with bands. There's like these special bands that, it's like a rubber band, and it stops you from opening your hands. So you need to work the other direction. And then the other thing when it comes to forearms,
no,
right,
you're good. Don't worry about it.
You got to work your wrist angles, right? And I have a twist your wrist here. And this device is really helpful for working lateral movement on your wrist, because there are muscles here. If you injure these muscles because they don't have enough strength, they'll hurt like any other muscle. And so this device will move your wrist up, and then when you bring it this way, it'll work the other way. You can bring it behind your head, and it will work the other direction. There are other ways to get that motion. You can use clubs, work really well for that too. Any kind of lever where you're pushing your wrist, but those muscles need to be trained just like any stability. If you're gonna do handstand work and stuff like that, you need all those wrist motion. So one of the tricks with preventing breaking down of your hands, right, is hydration, right? Typically, you break calluses when your skin gets damaged and then dried out, and then it rips. Is usually the sequence. So there's lots of balms that you can use for moisturizing, just ex versa. Lots of moisturizers out there for your hands. I'm not an expert on moisturizers, other than I do know you need them. And it works because you don't let the cells die as quickly, right? If you do wind up ripping your hands, the best thing to do, new skin works really well in terms of closing up the wound. They make special Band-Aids now that are for blisters. They're kind of like this plasticky Band-Aid. They stick much better. It usually takes about 2 weeks or so to heal. So you'll usually get a warning when you're close to ripping your hands. You should stop, because if you don't actually rip it, it's fine, and it'll heal the next day. If you tear it open, it's going to take 2 or 3 weeks to heal. I find with the bandage, you put the bandage on, and you put rock tape over it, and it holds pretty good. In a couple of days, you're able to put pressure on it again. But basically, the other trick is to file down your calluses, right? And you're going to use something like a pumice stone. I think the bigger ones work better because the little ones get your hands tired, and you just use a pumice stone to get rid of all the dead cells so that you don't have the dead cells kind of blocking stuff out of the way. And you just file them down, they'll come up, and you just stay with it so that you don't have too many that kind of get in the way of your skin and start creating levers against your skin. And so that's why you should file them down. You can find these are like $10, they're in every drugstore. Any questions on hand stuff? Alright. For workout shoes, there are really 3 categories, right? There are lifters, there are CrossFit shoes, I guess 4 categories. Trail running shoes and road running shoes. They're all very, very different. There is no one shoe that does them all, no matter what they advertise. Your CrossFit shoes, right now there are 2 companies that are making the best shoes, I think, on the market. And right now it's Reebok and it's Nike. Noble's shoes were really good a few years ago. Their technology hasn't kept pace. They probably would need more work with getting apparel and stuff out. They look really nice. And honestly, the 2010, 2009 Reebok and Nike equivalents were all the same type of shoe. And Noble's had better longevity, and people liked them better for that reason. They also looked better, and they had a harder shell. But I think the footbeds and stuff, the Nikes, the Metcons and the Nanos, they continue to improve. They have a better platform for pressing through the floor. And right now, they're a better shoe. They're also usually less expensive. I'm sure at some point Noble will, companies, change generations and then they'll be ahead. Right? But right now, that's where I would do. I have both the brand new Nike Metcons that I'm wearing right now, and I have the Nano 12s, and they're both really made they're much better for running, and no-goes would be where you're kind of crashing into the floor. I did look at the brand new Nano, which is the 13 with their lift run platform, and I looked at how that works. It's basically a heel cushion while you're running that compresses, so when you lift, because too much cushioning is not good for lifting at all, and so the cushioning is a little bit that it has a compression amount and then it gets hard. That's good for a lot of people who don't run correctly. You don't really need heel cushioning when you're running. Right? You shouldn't be heel striking to start with, but a lot of people don't know that, and they run with heel crashing, and those shoes would be better for you, or you can just fix your gait so you don't need it. So I don't think the new run lift platform is probably all that helpful if you're a midfoot striker like you should be when you're running. Make sense? Talking about lifters, for me, the Nike Romaleos is the best lifter for me because I have wider feet. And if you do have wider feet, TYR has a new wide lifting shoe, and then it was the Romaleos for a long time. A lot of people still feel the Romaleos is the better of the two, with kind of a more durable design, better looking design, similar prices. The other options that people like might be the Adidas Powerlift, and that's kind of more of a narrow shoe. I tried the Legacy Lifter, which is Reebok's option. I didn't like it personally. Some people do like it, but I don't think they've tried a lot of the other ones. It's not a terrible shoe. I think the other ones are your better choices. I've used Innovate's gear a lot. I don't find it comparable to some of these other companies myself, and so I don't really recommend Innovate stuff. I feel like the other companies are still making better quality shoes. What do you need lifters for? Squats, squatting patterns, basically. Things like the jerk, the clean, because you got to catch it in a squat, front squat, back squat, overhead squat. That's what it's for. For deadlifts, you don't really need shoes. And if you're going to wear shoes, your lowest shoes that you have are better for deadlifts. Your Converse type and Chuck types, they're not better for Olympic lifting. They're a cheaper option, but they're not better. They're not comparable either. Even if you have a good ankle range, the stability in lifters is much higher. It's designed to support all the turning and stuff like that. They're a better choice. Converse are also not as good as things like Metcons and Nanos for CrossFit. They weren't designed for that. But they're definitely better than running shoes. So you have that. For running shoes, there's lots of categories of running shoes. You have your minimal running shoes, your high volume running shoes, your trail running shoes, and there's even variations within them. But at a high level, if you're going to do trail running, you need trail shoes. If you do road running, you need road shoes. They're not interchangeable. Just like lifters and regular shoes are not interchangeable. You need one on their own. I have almost all of the trail shoes on the market. My favorites are the Speed Cross. I like them the most because they're partial waterproofing. Their lacing technology is really good. They're very light. They're very stable. Having tried all the other ones, my close second would be the Brooks Cascadia as kind of an all-purpose stable shoe. Those are both probably the best ones that I have. For running, me and a lot of people, the Brooks GTS seems to be the leading shoe right now in terms of stability. If you need stability when you're running, that one I think most people like the most. I think they're on GTS 12. Any questions about shoes?
I'll jump in on the trail. So usually you got a more aggressive tread and some armoring in the forefoot to protect that forefoot from roots and rocks and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the Cascadia
typically the difference.
Cascadias have a rock plate for that reason. Not too many running shoes do, but you definitely need the more cushioning. If you try running with minimal shoes, you'll bruise your foot sooner or later, and that can take months to heal. So that's either you have cushioning or you have some kind of plate to help. The Speed Crosses They don't have too much on that, but I think the bottoms are harder, and so it disperses the force rather than it going through your shoe like a conventional road shoe would do. You can't run on the road with trail shoes. The rolling friction is really high, and it will wear you out. Plus, there's too much shock. There's this whole movement of like running on the road with minimal shoes. It's a terrible idea. I'm not sure where that comes from because my phone ringing. Just press the volume off.
Volume off?
That's good. Yeah, just click it once. Then stop. What was it saying? Oh, minimal running shoes on the pavement is a terrible idea. Humans are not designed to run on concrete. We never have been. And so you'll just introduce injuries and percussion injuries. Running on the ground is different. And if you can run on ground without lots of rocks, I don't know where you do that around here, but that would be fine. You can find that. And maybe an island or something. Grass. Any other questions? Alright, let's talk about weight belts. There are really 3 kinds of weight belts on the market, and then more depending on how you want to break them apart. At a high level though, you have your nylon belts, your 3-inch belts, and then your 4-inch belts. Your nylon belts are good for Olympic lifting. They're also good for Metcons. Your 3-inch belt is good for bench press and deadlifts, and that's about it. Your 4-inch belt is good for overhead presses, it's good for jerks, and it's good for squats. You can use a 3-inch belt for squats, it's not as stable. If you use a 4-inch belt for deadlifts, you're going to pinch your stomach, and you won't want to do that many times because it hurts a lot. So they're not really interchangeable. If you can only budget one, I would go with this one, because you can use it for both, but the protection it provides and the stability is like 80% of what these kind of belts will do. You're going to lose a lot of top end range. Then you'll find with your choices of belts, there's your single prong design as well as your double prong design. Some of the newer belts, and I don't have one, have full spacing alternating, which lets you do a finer adjustment. And then you have your lever style belts like this one. Lever style belts, it's much heavier, the buckle design. They tend to be a little bit more expensive. The advantage of that is once you know where your lever is, you always can go in that place and it's consistent. As far as adjusting it, it's not hard. It's basically 2 screws, you move it over, and then it's adjusted. If you have a screwdriver, it's really not hard to do. One thing for some people on lever belts, the extra belt goes through near your side, and that can be a little uncomfortable because it's going to slide through. Where on this kind of belt, it comes out and then it gets in your way. I mean, they're both annoying. So you got to just kind of weigh which one's more annoying to you. The reason that the 3-inch belt isn't great for Olympic lifting is it's really easy to snag it on your hips as you pull the bar up. These belts are much thinner, and so if you do snag, it's not quite as jarring, and you're less likely to snag it because it's much thinner. That makes sense? Any questions on belts?
4-inch belt, what's the purpose?
It's for squats, whether it be front squats, back squats, and for presses. It gives you a ton more force production. You'll find that your hips are much more stable because you can stabilize your pelvis. A stable pelvis keeps your hips in the same spots. It just makes it much easier. Compared to the 3-inch belt, it's a little harder to find where to press out on. This is like a whole big surface. The 1-inch makes a huge difference on the belt. But when you start getting into anything, there starts to be a lot of variances too, right? You can go to the thickness, right? There's different thicknesses belts. This is a 10 millimeter belt. They make 13 millimeter belts. They make 7 millimeter belts. The thicker the belt, the more supportive it is, the less bend it has. And so when it's thicker, it tends to get in your way more. And so some people might like one belt style over the other ones. Even the rigidity of the leather will vary. This one's a little bit stiffer than this one is, but usually true of 3-inch or 4-inch belts. Any other questions? Looking at belt costs, largely the manufacturers are, when I've looked at them, they're all pretty reasonable. You usually get what you pay for with belts. So, these belts are going to cost $100 to $150, depending on how much flashy stuff you like on them. And then your nylon belts are going to be like $40 to $80. Really the best, most important thing is the kind of clasp the nylon has. Some of them only have Velcro, which they can release on you. This has a double clasp so that it takes the stress off the Velcro, so that it doesn't open up on you when you're lifting. Straight Velcro ones are not going to last, and you can get injured because you lose control of the belt in a lift. All right, let's go on to knee sleeves. Whether you should buy knee sleeves. So for belts, honestly, I feel everybody should have a belt. A lot of people don't think you should have belts. A lot of people feel like you should just develop your core. If you're doing squats, you're working your legs. You work the core with the GHD and sit-ups and things like that. You're just kind of hampering your development of your legs, not using a belt. And you're giving yourself enhanced risk for injury. There's no advantage. The squat is not a core exercise. And it doesn't really build core muscle either, because it's just a kind of a constant hold position. So, you want to build muscle volume in your stomach, you do flexion and extension, like any other type of exercise. So while core strength is important for squats, I don't, when I use a belt, I'm still working my core, right? So it just lets your body keep up with it. Just like the grips, I don't recommend not working grip strength, but the deadlift is not a grip exercise. I work grip on its own. It works better. Make sense? All right. For knee sleeves, there's 2 styles on the market, really. There's also knee wraps. I don't have knee wraps, but I'll talk about them. So there's powerlifting sleeves, and then there's fitness sleeves. Okay. The difference is kind of the rigidity of the material, how thick it is, and how annoying it is to have on your legs, and how tight it is. Powerlifting sleeves are much tighter. You're not going to want to wear them for an hour because they tend to irritate your skin a lot. They provide a lot more assistance. If you feel when you do lunges and jump squats and other things that your knees feel sore, powerlifting sleeves are going to be really helpful for you. I don't have that problem myself. I have sleeves. It's probably my least needed equipment for me, but that's not true of other type of protection I have. Where fitness sleeves, I like them for movements where I'm going to be bringing my knee to the floor, Turkish get-ups, lunges, anything where I have to bring my knee down. They're very helpful because they take all the shock and irritation out of being on your knees. So I like them for that reason. Price-wise, they're around the same price. They wear out because the stretch dies after a while, so you have to replace them. Wraps, same thing. There's none that last forever, depending on the quality. That's really how long it will last. Okay. deadlift shin guards. I don't know my deadlift shin guards are. I don't have them with me. So those are basically pads you wear over your shins. They're really handy because with cleans and deadlifts, you'll scratch your shins. There's no way around it. You can use knee sleeves for that to an extent. They tend to be too big on your shins, and it's kind of floppy in a way, and they don't really go high enough, but I'd say it's better than nothing. Deadlift shin guards are also really handy for rope climbs. Rope climbing without shin protection, you're going to tear up your legs. And they're pretty good. I've used a couple different deadlift shin guards. They're largely all the same. It's really the same neoprene material up front. 7 millimeters is a good choice. They have 5 and they have bigger. Bigger pulls it away from you. Too little and there's not enough protection. And usually the back is just like a fabric material. I like the ones that have a foot lock on the bottom so they can't pull up on you. And I'll tend to wear knee sleeves too when so I don't get the top of my knees from doing a lot of movements. And so I do wear powerlifting sleeves for deadlift type exercises. All right. Versalifts and hyperlifts. So if you can't afford to buy lifting shoes and CrossFit shoes, they make these handy things. And you can stick them into your CrossFit shoes and they give you a little bit of extra lift in your heel, about 1/4 inch. It makes a big difference on squats. It's about halfway there. And then you put them in any shoes you like. There's really no down part to using them other than they're not quite as good as lifters. But they are good because there are workouts that we'll do where lifters would be great, except we're also doing some other terrible exercise like double unders that would be terrible at. And so these have a nice place when you have, heavy front squats and double unders. And then I want to use something like the hyperlift heel. There's other companies that make, Nike makes these, but there's other companies that make them. And they're nice. You can put them in any shoes you like. That brings us to jump ropes. No matter what CrossFit gym you go to, you should buy your own jump rope. I tell this to everybody, and everybody's just like, yeah, you have a bunch of jump ropes. You will not learn to do double unders if you keep switching your rope size and rope thickness. And when you switch ropes, that will happen. Double unders are a question of getting used to timing. And if you're not used to the timing, you'll mess it up. I just recently worked with one of our members who does double unders perfectly all the time. She forgot a rope and she was missing it all the time. And she's amazing at that. Because the speed of the rope changes based on the length and then the weights. There are different weight ropes with different weight handles, and it's all about having that muscle memory so you know exactly the timing, and you'll never get it if you keep switching the rope size. What's important in ropes, there's a couple of things to think about. The heavier the cable, so the thicker radius cable, is going to move slower with more hand feedback. It's easier to control. It is more tiring. If you're not as good at it, a heavier rope is going to be better for you. Similarly, a longer rope is going to be better because it's going to go on the floor more so and easier to learn. But it takes more energy to do that. So the better jump ropers will use a shorter rope. I use a 9-foot rope. If I was really good at it, I'd be using an 8-foot rope. But I can't seem to get that to work. I can't jump fast. The smaller circle, the faster it is, right? And I get those double unders faster. For me, I'm not worrying about doing them faster. I'm worrying about doing them consistently. So before we work, it's mechanics, consistency, intensity. I can do the mechanics. Am I 100% consistent at them? No. When I get there, then I'll start to think about thinner rope or maybe a shorter rope or both. Another good tip for jump ropes is choose one with a fixed length rope. Most jump ropes nowadays are adjustable. I think that's an innovation in the wrong direction. Because again, you change the rope length, you're going to change how the rope's going to move. If you do it the same length all the time, you'll get better at it from practice. How much should ropes cost? They vary. My rope, this is Buddy Lee's rope. It's about a $70 rope or so. The real differences in ropes are the way it spins, like on how long it'll spin, how long the bearings last, the weighting on the handles. I like a shorter handle rope. The cables are all the same. They're aircraft cable, like been around since like the 30s. That's all that it is. They're different based on the thickness, but they're all the same. So, and then the kind of metal that they use. So, I don't think there's really a big difference between ropes so much. You just have to find one with the right weight for you and stick with it. The other thing to check is make sure your handles spin evenly. A lot of times they won't. If they don't spin evenly, you're going to have a lot of trouble with the rope turning on you. Alright. In my support column, I see I did not talk about wrist guards. And these are wrist guards. These are kind of an underappreciated piece of equipment from a lot of people. They do a lot of nice things. On the cleans, they take a lot of the wrist stress off of catching. And on presses, they'll help you keep your wrist neutral. A lot of people's wrists cave when they bench press or overhead press. When your wrists cave, you lose power delivery. There's a split decision as to whether or not it's safe to do handstand push-ups and stuff like that, but you won't press as much weight. Wraps give you the extra support so you can maintain neutral wrists as you press. When I'm doing very heavy work, I'll always wear them. My wrists hurt less and I can push more weight. That's both good, right? And if I want to work wrist flexion, I might just work wrist flexion rather than trying to do it on a max overhead press, right? You'll see this, like everything else, there's different choices with wrist wraps. Basically, the biggest difference you'll see is the length of the wrap. The longer the wrap is, the more support it gives you because of the number of ties around your hand. The longer the wrap, the bigger it's going to be on your wrist and the more annoying it is to work with. So you have to balance how much annoyance of having huge wrists versus smaller profile where you get less support. If you have wrist pain, highly recommended to use it. They work really well for doing wrist pain.
Do you have any recommended brands?
I haven't used that many. These are from Mark Bell's company. They're gangster wraps. These are one of the first ones I bought, and they have been good for a long time. I probably could use to refresh them because again, the elasticity's going away. I think SPD makes nice wrist wraps as well. It really depends. You know, your companies that make the knee pads, they don't make wrist wraps too. They pretty much all make them. Weighted vests. So weighted vests are really good for working calisthenics works. I did a whole big survey on all the weight vests across the board. There's really 3 of them to consider. This is the Hyperwear's Elite Vest. It is really good vest for the 10-pound and 18-pound type range. You can do handstand work in it and just about anything. It's really good for running. The biggest weakness of this vest versus competitors at its price range is it's very slow adjusting. It's like a half hour to change the weights because there's a little weight in each one. Each one weighs like an ounce. And you need a little special tool, pull it out, push it in. So it takes a very long time. Other vest is much faster. The Tac Tech 511 vest is a really nice vest that's much faster to adjust. It does have a big lip on it though, like the bulletproof vest, and so it's not good for Olympic lifting because it's the same problem with the weight belts. They're also not going to work well for inversions where the vest is going to come up on your shoulders. But short of that, they're really good. They use a single plate essentially inside. Rogue makes one too. It built it off the Tac Tech one. It's kind of a no frills version of the Tac Tech vest. It costs a little bit less. They took away a lot of the optional features like some of the elastic and some of the bells and whistles. That's good if, for example, you own a gym and want to supply a bunch of weight vests to people. That's really that market. Where for personal, the difference between the Tac Tech and the Rogue vest, it's not a big pricing difference. And so I probably go with the Tac Tech vest versus the Rogue one if I'm just buying it for myself. With the weights, the price range isn't all that much. And the Tac Tech definitely looks cool for sure. So you have that. Yoga mats. So there are lots of kinds of yoga mats. I don't recommend people use fitness mats for yoga because on standing balances and inversions there's too much cushioning and it just wears out the stabilizers and it creates more injury and they tend to be more slippery. There's highly cushioned mats. If you're a heavier person, your 11 millimeter mats and they're high thickness are really the way to go. There are mats of different types of stickiness, right? Some mats are better if you're sweaty, and some of them are better if you're not sweaty. For example, one of the best-selling mats in the market is a Manduka Ultra mat. I have one, I can't stand it. It's a very expensive mat, it's like a $130 mat, and I slide on it all the time. Other people tell me it's the best mat ever. It's super durable, and it's highly cushioned, and for me, I can't use it. So really making sure you find a mat that's going to work with the kind of feet you have and how much you sweat is really important. The other big difference on yoga mats is the weight. Some of them are very heavy, and then some of them are medium and some of them are really light. When you're carrying it around, it can make a big difference. Some yoga mats weigh something like 4 or 5 pounds, and some of them weigh like 1 pound. And that may change the thickness. Some yoga mats are double-sided, and some of them are not. You don't really need a double-sided mat for anything. Maybe if you're running classes where you flip the mat over, but there's no real reason that you need a double-sided mat for that design. Some mats have alignment grids. Those are helpful if you're brand new to yoga. If you're doing yoga for a while, you don't need an alignment grid or anything. You should know that. It's kind of very basic type thing, but it is a selling feature for some mats. Of all the mats I have like 8 mats or so for each one from my brand companies. The mat that I use is a Lift For Me mat. It's also like a $300 mat. It's very expensive. They're not the most durable, but this one's lasted for me well, and it balances for me cushioning and stickiness versus all the other mats that I have, which either don't have quite as much cushioning, quite the stickiness, it has stability. You kind of have to try different ones to get an idea which one would go for you. Mats that cost less than like $60 retail, probably I would stay away from. They're really not going to be good enough for what you need, unless you get a discount because it's a previous model. Right? If you get it on sale and it's a bill sale, it's fine. Cheaper mats, they're either going to wear out, they're not going to have the kind of cushioning, or they're going to slip. I have a microfiber mat, which is hard to clean, so that's another big thing, whether you're cleaning a special brush to clean that style mat. Any questions about mats? Jump ropes. So, with recovery, I think probably the most useful tool to learn to use are Graston blades or washout blades. They're extremely effective In the United States, they are kind of a controlled piece of equipment where you may need a license in some states to use them. That said, I mean, the Chinese invented it 1,000 years ago, and they use them all the time over there. So they're not hard to use. With some basic understanding, they're very effective. You can hurt yourself using them incorrectly. You can hurt yourself with a barbell using it incorrectly too. So what you do with it is muscles that kind of have formed trigger points and stuff that stay tight. You can use it to really loosen it out. It speeds recovery a lot. It can help create recovery when you're having trouble with kind of constant tightness, which a lot of people do have. It's considered an instrument-assisted massage, and in a lot of states, you need to be a certified massage therapist to use them, just because massage is a regulated industry in a lot of states. Not all countries regulate it. But you can use them on yourself. There's no regulations in any states that I know of that call that. They're really good. What about which one should I get? They're a lot like knives, right? There are knives that cost $10 and there are knives that cost $200, and they're both made of stainless steel. How is that possible? Why does one cost one? Well, it has to do with maybe the pores in the steel, the blade of the steel, how many times it's been reinforced and forged. When you use, I've used different blades. The more expensive blades have a much more communication with your hands. You can feel a lot more. It's a lot like using an expensive knife versus a cheap knife. You notice it when you use it. How much did you pay for a massage tool? Like 100 to 150, I think is a good range. You really only need one. The difference is maybe you need if you're a clinician, but they all do the same thing. They're just kind of different angles and things like that. Some might be more convenient if you're doing this all day. But you don't need 5 tools because they really all work the same. They just have different edges and things. I think rock tape makes a really good kit. That's around $400. It gives you 3 blades. If you're looking for a 3-blade kit, I've used a lot of other ones. I still find that they did a good job in terms of price and value myself. Kinetic tape, I like rock tape the most. It's really effective for helping with recovery and tightness. A lot of people underestimate how much it can help you. It basically promotes healing and gets the muscles that should be firing to fire. Usually you use it near wherever the pain is. So if your neck's tight, you might use it on your shoulders or whatever area is kind of close to it. You do have to kind of understand, if I'm using it for my knee, why does my knee hurt? That's the key. If you don't know why your knee is hurting, taping probably won't work because you won't tape the right thing, or you'll tape the wrong thing and it won't help you at all. So, if you have to trace the pain to the source. If there are weak muscles that are not firing and creating pain cycles, tape is super effective for helping with that. It also helps with direct recovery. If you're very tired from workouts, rock tape can speed that along really nicely. As far as massage guns go, I have the 2 leading ones on the market. They are Theragun and where's the other one? What's that? Hypervolt. I've used them both a lot. The Theragun Pro is better for just about everything, I think, but there are some exceptions to that. Its actual engine and handle, the Theragun, I think, is better and it's more maneuverable. The electronics and the packaging of the Hypervolt is better. The case is better. The charging is better. The battery indicator is better. The switches are better. Like, the frills are much better. It's also a little bit cheaper, but the actual integrity of the massage gun itself, I think, is better on Theragun, unless you're really sore. The Theragun is like kind of an all-in tool. And when I do a lot of running, like I can barely even get it onto my calves without it. Like it's too much. And so I like the fact that maybe the Hypervolt isn't as much, so I can actually get started a lot of times. I do have Hypervolt calf massagers, which are a new thing that they made. It was based off their like Normatec line, which are for full leg recovery. I think they work great. They're very handy, battery powered. They help me with calf recovery a lot. I recommend them a lot. Other than they're too expensive, I think they're great. They're about $400, but it saves me from doing a ton of massage work with the ones that I don't like doing. Toe spacers, if you have wide feet, you definitely need them. People's toes get compressed all the time. People are becoming more and more aware of this. As you lose some of your toe function, you develop problems up the chain, right? So you need all your toes to work, and it's really important for balance. Your feet have to be, your bones and your flanges have to be spread apart. That's the way humans are designed. Shoes have compressed people's feet together for aesthetics reasons and also to keep the shoe connected to the foot. And so toe spacers are helpful. You can start to work your toes so that they stay in the position they're supposed to be, so you don't develop all these feet problems that people have. Most of them are created by shoes that you're wearing that are too tight on your toe box. Talk about wrist rollers. There are other tools for wrists I have here. So one of the more common injuries people get is tennis elbow and golfer's elbow. This is an arm aid. What it does, you kind of attach it to your leg, and then you can either massage the top of your arm, or if you're doing golfer's elbow, you'd work on the bottom. When the muscles, and it's true of anywhere, anytime you constantly have tension on a muscle, you get tendon pain, tendinitis. Tennis elbow is a form of tendinitis, right? They all are. And it's always on, it's always pulling, and it gets irritated and more pain. So these myofascial release tools, like a massage gun, help downregulate the tissue and turn it off. The Graston blades can smooth out the tissue and break up some of the notches that are in it. They don't really know the mechanism of them. They do know that it does work. Learning why it works. They're not even sure trigger points really exist, when you actually read about it, but, well, you feel something and they don't really know what it is. Our imaging tools are not so good to find what actually is going on with it, but it will definitely help. These little TheraBand tools called Flex Bar are really helpful for wrists. They can strengthen wrist extension and as well as plantar flexion, so go both directions. There's 4 different thicknesses. For doing wrist flexion and extension, they're probably the best tools on the market. People make all these big fancy machines. These tools work as good as any of them. The heaviest model is really quite thick. This is kind of the medium level, and it's really all that you need, absent you're a lumberjack or something that you really need a ton of that. But the 95% of the population, this simple tool is really all that you need to use.
And say again what that is.
These are called Flex Bars.
Flex Bar.
We have 4 of them in the gym. The yellow, the lightest. These are kind of the 2 medium sizes. I have another kind of massager here. So your Hypervolt and your Theragun are really good, but the one place you really can't do that's really important is behind your back. And there's a lot of tools like this one. I think this is from Brookstone, but I'm not 100% sure. But basically, when you turn it on, it has like little rotating beads like the massage chairs do. Right? And they rotate, and then you basically use the handles to adjust your tension. Right, and then I can put it on those spots in my back that get tight. In CrossFit and a lot of anything where you're lifting lots of stuff, those are your working muscles. It's very effective for loosening them up. It will decrease pain. It's also helpful because those muscles get tight from working in chairs, right? So the tool like this is very handy if you can't reach your back like me. This one has heat. I don't think that does anything, but the rotating stuff does work really nicely. Heating pads and ice packs. So I said the heat on this doesn't really work that well, and I forgot about my elbow pads, so I'm going to work them in next. Heat is really helpful. Heating pads, if you're sore, it works wonders. It increases blood flow, it gets broken tissue out, it works really nicely. If you irritate your back, it can help healing times like a factor of 3 or 4. I've used a bunch of them. They're all kind of the same. They're almost all made in China now. I haven't found much differences. The ones that are heavier are good if you want to have it on top of you. And then honestly, it's really the heating panel that makes the most difference. They cost about $50 or so, but sooner or later you overdo it in a workout and you're sore. It can really help improve the speed of recovery. I didn't talk about elbow pads. I like them maybe more than knee pads. They're more uncomfortable than knee pads, for me anyway. I think, you can think about, is this part of your arm more sensitive than that part of your shin, right? Depending on different people have different sensitive parts of their body. My shins are not that sensitive, my arms are more, so it's more irritating. Okay? However, for cleans and muscle ups or any movement where you have a lot of load in a position, they're very helpful. They also protect your arms from getting cut up by the rings, which is nice. It's a nice bonus. If I do a lot of muscle ups or a lot of ring dips, my elbows tend to get irritated, the way some people's knees do. And when I put the wraps on, no, not at all. And so you don't want irritation in your joints when you're working out, it just leads to injury. So for me, these work really good. What about ice packs? There's all sorts of research about ice and heat. Here's how I've understood it to come out. Ice is helpful for impact and injuries and pulls and things like that, sudden strains, where heat helps relax muscles. So if you drop a weight plate on your foot, ice would be the choice, right? Or if you have pain, right? Ice can be very helpful for reducing pain. Pain can cause reoccurrence of more pain through reinforcing pain signals, causing it to cycle on you, and ice can break all that down. Ice also can help people recover faster. Heat does it as well. If you have too much inflammation from working out, ice can be also helpful for that in lowering overall inflammation. For me, I've had more luck with heat in terms of recovery speed, but lots of people also have help with ice as well. Most of the time, you don't need to use both. One of them will work. If you're going to use ice packs, you need to buy an ice pack. Well, either you do like a dunk tank if you want to have in your backyard, or make ice barrels. You don't have space for that. But you probably need an ice pack designed for the area so that it fits well. Because just using an ice bag and a rubber band might not be very effective. So you need to have a specialized one in your spot. I listed there the 3 probably most helpful things for recovery. Protein is really helpful for just about any strength workout. Also increases muscle mass. Your whey protein is going to be your best choice, particularly whey isolates. Creatine is probably the second most helpful for recovery and building strength. It's been studied tremendously. We talked a lot about it in nutrition. There's really no down parts to taking it. It is extremely helpful. BCAAs are helpful if you're working out in a fasted state or you're doing endurance type training. That's really where they'll help. And then some things that people will have with BCAAs, such as glutamine, can help for other reasons. That should be why you use BCAAs. And then that brings us finally to gym bags, backpacks, and duffel bags. The most important thing I think you need is compartments in your bag. It's really easy to lose track of it. So whichever bag you buy, whether it be some kind of suitcase, or we have my Haven bag over here, or Bear Complex's bag, honestly having the compartments really saves a ton of energy. I found that in trail running too. Like I'm like, did I get my gels and do I have my headband and stuff? And then I don't know if it's in the bag and it creates extra stress. When you have compartments and you can just keep it in that spot and then you know your bag needs to be full. To me that cut out a lot of stress of missing stuff. And so I really like it for that reason. Questions? One of the things I want to provide you is advice on what you should buy next, what you have and what you don't have. So if you don't know, ask, Thanks.
In terms of the most critical equipment that you would recommend to anyone, let's say either starting out or somebody who doesn't have equipment at all, what would you say like the top 3 items somebody should get for CrossFit?
For CrossFit, definitely CrossFit sneakers would be the first thing I'd have them buy. A jump rope. You don't have to buy an expensive jump rope. You can buy a $10 jump rope, but having your own rope is really key. And then maybe a nylon belt. After that, probably a roller. I have 2 or 3 rollers over here. A lot of gyms will have rollers, of course, right? There's lots of different kinds. The harder rollers are better when your mobility is better because there should only be so much discomfort. So you should be able to work to very stiff rollers after a while, but you will get, you need to do some work at home or you need to stay late. Lots of beginners don't do that and then they get in pain all the time. You can use a massage gun. They're more expensive. They're like rollers. They work on the same principle. They work a little bit better, I think, but they cost a lot more, and they have to be charged and all this other stuff. The rollers don't. So I put rollers high up on there. Protein too. The results about protein are undisputable. You get more muscle, less sore. Time is valuable. Everything's expensive. Taking protein, you're just giving away 15% of your results because you don't want to do protein. And if you don't want to use whey products because you want to not have cows in slavery, then use your vegetarian or plant-based protein. Then after that, I probably would say the gymnastics straps are probably the next one. You're doing CrossFit, you're going to be on the pull bars a lot. Your hands will get cut up. There's a lot of different brands. You need something that works for you. There's different models. You don't see gloves on here. I've yet to use a pair of gloves that works. I've used lots of them. I've never found one that works. I don't know any professional CrossFitters that use gloves. If you watch the Open, nobody's got gloves on. There's no rule that says you can't use gloves. They don't use gloves because they don't work. I don't think that for every reason the technology for gloves doesn't work when you're doing barbell work. It doesn't work when you're doing pull-up work. I don't think weightlifting gloves make sense. I don't know why. They don't really work well. You need them for running when it gets cold. And then after that, I think it would depend on where you have weaknesses and specialization. Like, if you need a 4-inch belt, well, if you want to get really good at powerlifting, you need lifters and you need, if you want to build more endurance, you're going to need trail running shoes or whatever it might be. So I think specialization kind of after that. Any other questions? All right, well, I hope this was helpful and give you some idea of what to get. But this is all my stuff, and I don't know what I'll get next. But right now, I got everything that I can think of that I need anyway.
What are these things that look like sieves? They're round with the holes punched through them?
Oh, I got those. I'm going to show you this other ball too. So, when you're talking about effective tools, right, you have three tools that largely do the same thing. You have your lacrosse ball. This is a tool from Kelly's Direct called the Gemini, and then he makes like a little bigger version called the Supernova. These work like rollers do in more specialized spots. The lacrosse ball being very helpful for your foot is probably its most useful spot, and also behind the shoulder blade, like the massager I was using. The Gemini can also be used behind the back too, and this tool is really good for calves and quads because it creates more space than the lacrosse ball does, and it gets you off the ground a little bit more and it's harder. The little bumps and stuff help break and move the skin around, so it's going to be much faster. I think of the three of these, I think the Supernova is probably the most useful if you're already in pretty good health. Otherwise, it'll feel like a torture ball and you won't be able to use it. So you have to kind of work up to a ball like this, but I think, super useful. I put this ahead of a roller for sure, and for like space and cost and stuff, I think it's more valuable than the massage guns, which cost 10, 20 times what this does. This one tool can get a lot of them if you're up to using it. They make different hardnesses. Right? There's a couple of companies that make softer ones, and those are good if you're not ready for a ball at this level. And then my sieves over here. So these are kind of like a multi-purpose tool for hands. So the different colors are kind of band thickness, right? So the blue or the red is the thinnest, and then the blue, and then the green, and then the black. And what they do, you can use it for rotation of your wrist, right? It provides resistance against rotation, because rotation-based exercises are difficult to make. Weight and where it is and stuff, and so it can provide a very simple way of doing rotation, either direction. And it could be, I'm doing wrist rotation, but you can also use shoulder rotation too, right? Because you just change what you're doing. The other thing that I like about it is it's an effective way to stretch your hands, right? Because if you're going to do a lot of compression work, should you stretch the opposite way? Yeah, of course you should. You should stretch everything, right? How do you stretch your hands? It's hard to stretch your hands. This tool, you'll feel it right away. It'll open up all the tendons and stuff in your hands, and that can help with recovery and flexibility, so nothing gets too tight. There's a bunch of other stuff that they list that it does, like for your fingers and things. I never found any of them really work for me, but they'll come with like a little book, and it gives you like 20 exercises or so. But those are really the three that I keep coming back to. Any other questions? I appreciate you joining me, and this stuff helps. That's a lot of reality. I've wanted to do it for a long time. You don't want your joints to hurt. You need to promote recovery. If you don't, you need to take more breaks, and then it tends to work against you. So that's really what I've learned after doing it for 10 years. Cool.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.